Welcome back, dear listeners. This is, in fact, Fear Boners, presented by the Down in Front podcast, and I am your host, Andrew, back with you for episode 4 as we wind down the month of October, getting closer and closer to the day itself, Halloween. That being said, we have a few spooky topics to cover before the end of this month. This week, what we're going to be talking about is movies that are coming out in the future that we are very excited about. So things that are kind of getting us really excited for the horror genre, things to look forward to. Now keep in mind, some of these films are already out. They released this year within the last month or so. I just haven't gotten around to seeing them yet. Or they're still in the festival circuit touring and I've heard about them. Movies that I've just seen trailers for. But for the most part, this is stuff that might be far out in advance. Sequels, like, for example, to give you something, the part 2 of It is something that I'm very excited about because that remake that came out earlier this year was very good, and I can't wait to see the second part of that, for example. But some of the other ones we're going to get into, unfortunately, this list is a majority sequels, prequels, or remakes. That is the world that we live in nowadays. There doesn't seem to be that much more original ideas hitting the big screen these days, but the thing of it is I do have a few really good ones to highlight that are original films, so we will get around to that as well. Before we get into the list, though, I do want to give you guys a heads up as to what I've been watching. I did recently watch, as of yesterday, a film called Attack of the Lederhosen Zombies. This one, I believe, was either on Amazon or Hulu. I wasn't really expecting much from it, but hey, it turned out to be a really great movie. This one, you get kind of a setup like an 80s ski movie, like something that you'd expect to see everybody wearing crazy windbreakers, jumping around, wearing neon colors, doing crazy stunts. But it's basically a story of this guy who owns a ski mountain and a ski lodge on that ski mountain. He's looking to sell it to international investors, but to woo them, because they discuss a lot about global warming and how all the snow is going to melt and it's not going to be worth owning a ski mountain once all the snow's gone. He says he's basically invented a new kind of snow or a new chemical that will basically make his snow machines just infinitely create snow forever, no matter what happens with global warming. And of course, he carts out this giant neon bucket of ooze that he pours into a snow machine, and this crazy chemical snow turns everybody into zombies. The movie's really, really funny. There's some great moments. It's pretty hokey at times, too. There's a lot of great zombie kills in the movie. It does remind me a lot of a movie like Dead Alive, but it's very enjoyable. Definitely something to get into the spooky Halloween spirit. Also similar to the movie Dead Snow, if you haven't seen that one, just with less Nazis. There are a few languages spoken in this film, but it's not entirely in subtitles. It's mostly in kind of English for the most part, and very enjoyable. So yeah, if you had a chance to check out Attack of the Lederhosen Zombies. Another film that I got to watch recently and was rather excited about was Don't Kill It on Netflix. Now, I actually didn't get to finish this film because I started it pretty late last night and fell asleep. That's not any indication of the quality of the film. I was just very tired. But the main role is played by Dolph Lundgren, none other than the original Punisher and He-Man himself. And this movie puts him up against demons. That's right. He-Man, Punisher fighting demons. What more do I have to say? This film looked like it was going to be really badass from the trailer. It looks like it's going to be a little hokey, a la Stand Against Evil or Ash vs. Evil Dead, kind of. And from what I got into it, it looked like it was building up into being kind of a fun little movie. A good one for the Halloween season. Definitely, if you get a chance to check it out. The beginning of the film basically sets it up where there's this demon, sort of like, what was that movie? Fallen with Denzel Washington, where the demon can hop from body to body. Very similar to that, except it's Dolph Lundgren chasing him with big guns. Alrighty, and with that all said and done, we can get right into our list of upcoming films we are excited for. Now, to start off this list, I'd like to begin with some of the films I mentioned earlier that were some of the more original movies that are coming out, not necessarily sequels or remakes or prequels. And with that, when we were at San Diego Comic-Con over the summer, we went to a horror-themed panel that actually focused on the future of horror, where we got to see previews of a couple movies. One of those movies was The Endless, which I believe you can get right now through iTunes, and it was touring some festivals for a while, and it looked very good from the trailer they showed us. It's basically about two brothers who were basically living in a cult and basically managed to get out of that cult, but somehow sort of want to try to find a way back in to save other people or see what it's about, because they're not quite sure if it is a cult, maybe it's something else. There's this mystery surrounding what they were a part of, whether it was good, whether it was bad. There's, potential murder and intrigue and all these other things going on, but it also did look quite terrifying based on the trailer. Some of the effects look really great. It almost looks like it could hinge on like a horror sci-fi genre potentially. Lots of different things going on there. I don't really know what to expect, so I'm really looking forward to seeing that one. Then there was another one presented by director Mickey Keating, and it's called Psychopaths. This one looked really great. We got to see a monologue excerpt from the film performed by actress Ashley Bell, who played the lead in The Last Exorcism 1 and 2. If you haven't seen those ones, also great found footage films. Pretty spooky, where she plays a possessed girl, Nell. Those ones are pretty spooky as well, a little bit from a few years back. But in this film, she plays one of the psychopaths, and she delivers this fantastic, psychotic, crazed performance in front of a mirror while she's putting on her makeup. And just from that, it really made me want to watch this film, because essentially it's just about a bunch of psychopaths going crazy one night, and, murder and mayhem ensue, and it looks like a terrifying film. His other film, Carnage Park, which was about a sniper basically trapping people on his private property, was another one that he worked with Ashley Bell on in the last year that was also quite good. So he's been doing his thing for a while, but his last few horror movies have been great, so I'm very excited for Psychopaths. Another one that I found in my research for this episode was a film coming out called The Ritual. This one's a very stereotypical horror setup. A group of friends get together on a trip to go out camping, hiking in the forest. They get lost and they encounter a strange, menacing thing. You're not quite sure what it is. The trailer does a great job of making it seem really spooky. You're not sure if it's a person, thing, or what have you, if it's real or if it's hallucinatory. But it looks like it could be really, really spooky, because there's a lot of themes that are even conveyed in the trailer of grief, regret, and all these other things, because you're sort of presented with this introduction to one character where he hid while a corner store was getting robbed, and his friend wound up getting killed while he was hiding, and all of his friends are constantly making light of the fact that he's a coward, and maybe their friend would still be there if he was alive, and it was his friend's idea to go on this hiking trip, and they still go, and so you don't know, there's probably something there, something to do with it. But also what gets me really excited about this film is it's done by a gentleman, directed by a gentleman named David Bruckner. And looking into his history, he directed a few of my favorite films. He worked on the original VHS movie. He worked on Southbound, which was another great movie that came out in the last year or so, as well as The Signal, which is one of my favorite movies from 2007, which was another kind of zombie-esque technology takeover film that was really great. So if this movie comes out soon, I'd love to see it and review it. The Ritual. And another one of these original films that I noticed recently, heard being talked about, is a film called Killing of a Sacred Deer. It's made by the gentleman who put out The Lobster. I believe that was a year or two ago, which is a film that everybody tells me is amazing. I have yet to see. I do need to catch up on that one. But in this one, he's also got Colin Farrell, Nicole Kidman, Alicia Silverstone starring in this role. And in this movie, watching the trailer at least, it's really tense. It seems like it could be a really intense thriller where a surgeon I think what happens is the surgeon accidentally kills the father, or the father doesn't survive the surgery, and he sort of develops this bizarre fatherly relationship with the son of the man that he wasn't able to save. And, he tries to take care of him, or he tries to look after him, but then suddenly it turns weird when the kid starts doing strange things like setting the surgeon up with his now widowed mother and all these other creepy things. The trailer really makes it look like it's going to be a creepy, terrifying movie, and I'm really excited for that one. So when that one comes out, I'll definitely be at the theaters to see it. Now at this point, I'm going to start getting into some of the remakes and sequels and prequels that I mentioned before. One of which that I only found out about recently, that was recently released, was a remake of Dementia 13, which was actually Francis Ford Coppola's first film. In that movie, there's an older woman who, recently widowed, is trying to find a way to keep all of the inheritance for herself. Plots a way to murder all the other potential inheritors, but also at the same time there's an axe murderer going around kind of with the same idea, and you're not quite sure whether they're involved or not. So I'm pretty excited to see that. I believe it just came out on video on demand and things like that, so I'm going to see if I can find that one to see. It'll be interesting how they manage to adapt a Francis Ford Coppola movie, if they can do a better job than one of the masters. And then after that, I only found out within the last month or so that they were remaking Suspiria, a Dario Argento classic. In that movie, the way that the film was shot, the lighting, the set pieces, everything is part of it, so I'll be interested to see what they actually do with that in this remake. A lot of what I've heard recently is the cast is going to be amazing. There's going to be a lot of great female leads, including Tilda Swinton and Chloe Grace Moretz. Now, Chloe Grace Moretz is one of my favorites. She's actually not unfamiliar with horror movie remakes, as in she was a starring role in Let Me In, which was the remake of the film Let the Right One In, which is one of the only cases that I can think of where a original horror movie and the remake were both great films in their own right. Usually remakes are pretty bad. We had this discussion when we talked about It, but with those ones, both of those movies are really great, and she did a great job in the remake, so I'm really looking forward to her in this remake of Suspiria. In this film, you basically see an American dance student get sent over to a very prestigious German dance academy, and there is a murder mystery. People start dying. Of course people start dying. It's a horror movie. So yeah, that's another one to look forward to, and I'm very excited about it. The next film on my list could be considered an original movie, but also a sequel and or prequel, in that it is tied to the Cloverfield universe, or at least rumored to be tied to the Cloverfield universe. But the upcoming film God Particle, wherein a group of astronauts is stuck on a space station with a malevolent force that is threatening their existence. The description, all the information, at least that I found, was very vague, but there's a lot of people who think this is going to be tied to Cloverfield and last year's Cloverfield Lane. The prevailing theory is this could be potentially the satellite, or what we saw fall to Earth in the first movie, or it could have something to do with the aliens in the second movie. As much as I know about it, I don't know a lot, but if it is tied to the last two movies, it makes me even doubly excited, because they always have those viral ad campaigns online where there's games or clues or things like that to look into, documents you can read and things you can follow. You can fall really far down that rabbit hole trying to figure that out, and that's always fun. So if God Particle has anything to do with the Cloverfield universe, super excited for that movie. The next film is already out. It's in theaters and on video on demand. It is The Houses October Built 2. Now, if you saw the original, it is available on Netflix. It's a great little flick, found footage about a group of friends that go to try to find the most extreme horror haunt. So they're basically trying to find haunted houses that are so extreme, like the ones that you read about in the news where people have to sign waivers and things like that. General haunted house, people aren't allowed to touch you, that kind of thing. Like, this is full hands-on, full contact, crazy haunted houses, and they're trying to find the spookiest one and document it. By the end, they find out that they're being sort of followed by this haunted house. A group of people are basically pursuing them, and they get sort of kidnapped by the end of the film, and this is lots of creepy, weird shit happens. And somehow, there's a sequel to the first movie, so I guess it's along the same lines. They're going to try to find the people who were in charge of the nefarious, spooky blue skull. I'm trying to remember the name of the people who organized the super spooky house at the end of the first movie. But they're sort of trying to dig into the origins of that and sort of get revenge or figure out what happened to some of their friends, because definitely not everybody makes it out of the first movie. So that one is one that I'm really looking forward to see very soon once I get my act together and get a chance to sit down and watch it. And next up after that is Creep 2, which has Mark Duplass. If you've ever seen The League, he's one of the funny guys on there. But it was kind of funny to see him in a horror movie in 2014's Creep, the movie that this is a sequel to, where basically a videographer answers a sketchy Craigslist ad to sort of take a one-day job to help shoot this film that he wants to make, and he finds out it's all about him, and the guy's really creepy. It's a super awkward film. Basically, it's one of those movies that makes you really uncomfortable, and then you realize, I mean, you know going into it it's a horror movie, but you don't know when it sort of takes that turn from like awkward and uncomfortable to full-on like creepy, weird terror. The trailer for Creep 2 looks amazing. Looks a lot along the same lines. I'm not really sure how things resolved into there being like almost a direct sequel, or how it might be related to the first one, or if it's going to be before the first one. It'll be interesting to see, but it is also Mark Duplass reprising his role as the creep, so that's super exciting because he plays it wonderfully. He's so creepy and so weird, and his timing and delivery is like perfect. So if you haven't seen Creep, check it out, because Creep 2 is coming out, I believe, next week. And I only found out about the next film recently, but I guess they're making a third film in the Dead Snow series, which I am super excited about because those movies are absolutely ridiculous. I've talked about them previously in other installments of Fear Boners, but it's basically a bunch of folks fighting Nazi zombies over in Eastern Europe, and it is fantastic. The last installment kind of made it like a little bit more funny, as gross and weird as it was getting. It is becoming more of like a gross out horror film, but some of the scenarios they're put into and some of the zombie kills that they get off with are amazing. The gore's really good. The acting's over the top. The set pieces are great. So the third installment of this movie is going to be balls to the wall, all or nothing, zombie killing madness, and I'm super excited for it whenever they do come out with it, because I know this was sort of rumored pre-production, so there's no set due date on it yet, but that is one that I'm very excited about. We are going to start getting into some of the films that I'm not sure if there are set due dates on, but before we get to that, I will get into some of the ones that we are familiar with. For example, Strangers, the film Strangers with Nev Campbell that came out a while ago. There's a sequel to that one coming out soon called Strangers Prey by Night, which sounds like it's going to be a pretty good one because that last movie was really creepy. In this film, it takes place in a trailer park, which is going to be an interesting dynamic versus one big giant house. So that'll be exciting to see when that comes out. And then as well, the Purge series of movies, which I'm a big fan of, is coming out with a prequel called Purge the Island, which is apparently going to sort of lead us up into the first ever Purge, kind of lead us into how it came about, which is actually kind of an exciting backstory I'm interested to hear about. And then, additionally, one that I found out about recently is a potential remake of the Day of the Dead film by George Romero. Day of the Dead Bloodline is coming out soon. It was one of the last projects he worked on. He did a bit of the writing on that film, so I'm excited to see that as one of his last works. It'll be interesting to see what he gave us, considering it's a remake of one of his original movies. So I'm excited for Day of the Dead Bloodline. And now to round out my list of movies we're looking forward to, I only found out, again, through my research, that there is apparently a planned remake of Stephen King's Pet Sematary. Not that first movie isn't great, but I'd be interested to see how they adapt it nowadays, especially since now we can kind of hope for really great Stephen King adaptations after a film like It. I know The Dark Tower happened. I haven't seen it, but I heard it was crappy. It looked like it was going to be crappy, but there's still hope that they're going to start actually making really decent Stephen King adaptations. So the fact that they are mentioning Pet Sematary gets me really excited. Additionally, there's a lot of things on the internet about The Conjuring 3. I did enjoy the first movie a lot. The second movie was pretty good. I'm hoping the third movie continues the tradition of those movies being decent, manufactured mainstream horror movies. Now, I haven't seen many of the offshoots, but I have heard the Conjuring universe referred to as just that, a film universe, like it's a DC or a Marvel film, which is interesting. I am kind of excited to see a horror film like that become so mainstream that, ghosts and apparitions and characters and demons from those movies get their own films, like Annabelle or The Nun or The Crooked Man. They're all getting their own films, so they're kind of this conglomeration of movies all tied to one series, which is really great and interesting. So I'm always excited to see where that goes. And lastly, I just recently learned that they are in talks to develop a sequel to Trick or Treat, the anthology film I mentioned in a previous episode, which makes me super excited because that film is amazing. I don't know if it's actually going to be related to the last movie, but at least I hope it has little Sam in his little costume terrorizing people again, because that first movie was incredible and it is definitely due a sequel. I'm always down for anthology movies, and especially Halloween-themed ones to watch around the holiday. So if you're out there, if the producers, directors, or anybody working on that movie is actually listening to this podcast, please make that happen ASAP. So that is pretty much my list of films that I'm excited for going forward. And as always, thanks so much for tuning into Fear Boners, presented by the Down in Front podcast. I'm your host, Andrew, and I appreciate you, dear listeners, coming in, listening to me babble on about movies that I'm excited about. And if for any reason we didn't mention a movie that you're super excited about, please, please, please reach out to us and correct that mistake. Let us know immediately if there's movies that we don't know about, especially me. Andrew, I love horror movies, so tell me all about the movies you're watching. You can reach us on Facebook at facebook.com/downinfrontpodcast. You can email us directly at downinfrontpodcast@gmail.com. You can do it out to Attention Andrew, especially if it's about horror movies. They'll forward it right to me. And then we are also streaming video games now on Twitch at twitch.tv/downinfrontpodcast. On Twitter, you can tweet at us at _DIFP. And then also, we do have our Patreon. And if you want to continue hearing us doing this, we do it for absolutely free, but any little bit helps. If there's anything you feel like you can contribute, we appreciate even $1, no matter what you give us. It's really appreciated. So you can go on over to patreon.com/downinfrontpodcast to learn more there. And as always, again, thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back next week just in time for Halloween. And, dear listener, don't tell them you heard it from me, but we might just have a surprise, a spooky, spooky surprise in store for you guys. We'll see you then.